you were on my talk before, I'm sorry, but maybe the questions will be different. So I just wanted to give you some basics about why I'm helping people retire internationally. You guys are on the front lines of seeing how many people are living in their homes in relative isolation. Would probably be better off somewhere where there's community or living in community or minimally in a safer environment than the house that they're in. They kind of get stuck because they can't think of something that they want to move towards. And many of them need the equity in their home. So they need to find some solution. And even those who have money for senior community a lot of them don't really want to live a life like that. They still want to be a part of their dance community, their yoga community, their spiritual community. And they still want to have some adventure, and they don't really see themselves in those kind of environments. So I have many years experience in senior housing in the Bay Area, both working in independent and assisted living, but also as a private consultant helping people find assisted living and in-home care and housing plus care strategies as they get older. And I was just feeling like really the middle class, not even people necessarily who have no money, but even the middle class, they weren't really able to afford some of the options up there. Looking at long-term care needs over time, they just don't have that kind of budget. I don't know how sensitive you all are. Wish I could see you. I can't see you all. But I don't know how sensitive you all are to the costs of housing there, assisted living, independent living, CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities. Do uh, can anyone gauge that for me? If you're sensitive to that pricing.
Carrie, I have a question for you. So we set this up as a webinar so that you don't see everybody. But if you'd like, I'm more than happy to promote everybody to a panelist, and we can make this more interactive. And then those of you that are on the call, you guys can see each other and ask questions. Would you like to do that?
Who I'm talking to.
Okay, so be patient with me for a second, everybody. I'm going to promote all of you to a panelist, which means you'll be able to see. Please do keep yourself muted, and we'll make sure to do any questions at the end. So I'm promoting everybody to panelists. So everybody's gonna be coming on here. Again, please keep yourself muted. You don't have to turn your camera on. But that way this can be a little bit more interactive. So if you want to keep going, I'll keep making everybody panelists.
Will do. So anyway, bottom line is I realized that for many people, if we were going to form communities or join communities or have a plan where you're an active senior, but you have some care over time, that it really needed to be outside of the United States of America. And it's in our areas, it's a lot about the property values, but it's also about the cost of labor, the high regulations, and the associated costs with that. So I just started doing little research trips. I've been a traveler for a long time. And initially started with three main objectives. One was to lead small group trips of people mostly in the Bay Area who wanted to start going to some of these expat locations and trying it on for size, but in a group where we're also learning about how it would be to age place there. So you're not just there when you're an active senior, but you're there for those high cost years, which is the biggest problem to start with, is when you start needing some help with your activities of daily living. And so leading trips, but also people who need senior housing now, like your mom has dementia and she can't afford $10,000 a month. Down here, $1,600 a month, and you've got great care. I mean, phenomenal. And especially in our area, I'm in the Lake Chapala area. We have about 25 very small, high quality assisted living memory care facilities, and independent as well. So that was the other, is like to help people find the support they need now who absolutely can't afford it up there. And then the third was to try to help people connect to or organize exactly what you were talking about, Jody, of like, how can we come, maybe before a lot of you were here, how can we come together and form our own communities with like-minded people, and build in some staffing knowledge support for aging issues over time. And this is happening all over the world where people are forming their own communities. I mean, most of you have probably been in friendship circles where you said, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we could just kind of make our own community, and then we'll grow older together, and we'll leverage resources and all pitch in. So I was just hearing people say that over and over again. And what I specifically wanted to do again was to help them set up their own communities, but also with the, like I said, the knowledge to actually support people, whether they get Parkinson's or break a hip or memory care issues, but really to have that kind of layered care over time so that you can stay in an affordable environment and a quality environment as long as you can. So I ended up realizing that most of the people I was talking to wanted to come to the Lake Chapala area. There are just a few, there are a few extra popular spots in Mexico for people who are looking at year-round retirement, not 4, 5, 6 months a year at the ocean, but places where the climate was amenable and the support was amenable to living out your older years. And I tried to lead a trip somewhere else, but people wanted to come to Ajijic and Lake Chapala area. So I ended up realizing I led trips here, and I ended up realizing that I wanted to work the supply side of it even more, to really create intentional, not just independent senior or assisted living senior communities, but this idea of intentional communities, co-housing, co-living, where the like-minded people to get coming together to create their own communities with support. So right off the bat, I found someone who had a big following. He was a spiritual teacher, and he got what I was trying to do. So we partnered together, and we built 26 tiny homes and advertised it to his database, to people who relate to a non-dual spiritual path and that understood this idea of aging in place, meaning you join your spiritual community, but there's actually a plan for you over time. And we marketed it, and people came. And within a year, we had bought the land, built the houses, and people were moving in. And that's been operating successfully now almost 2 years. Tremendous success. I'll tell you a little bit more about financial models and things like that. So they basically paid several years rent up front so that we could use that money to pay back the person who put up the initial money for the investment and to start the land and to start the construction. And that way we can keep the costs low because we're not carrying a high interest cost or having to pay traditional investors. So that pays back, that gets us debt free as people are moving in, and that way we can control the costs for the rest of the time they want to be there. That's just in a nutshell. And then everybody chips in on services, 10 meals a week, driver, manager. Someone's at my door, but I'm not going to get it. And they can share those costs too, and add layers of care over time, share costs for that too as they need to. So that's been highly successful. So now I'm building one that's Zen inspired, and it's going to be 10 apartments they're about 650 square feet, but they have access to common gardens, common mirador, covered patio. So again, it's privacy, your own place, but with a community of neighbors who are committed to each other over time, and then layers of staff added as needed over time. So we are actually, I don't know if any of you have heard of Enzo Village, which is being built in Healdsburg. It's a CCRC continuing care retirement community that is also Zen inspired. And we are partnering with their marketing team. So when people who really want to live in a Zen inspired community, when they really want to, sorry, somebody's just pressing my doorbell, but people who want to live in that kind of environment, but can't afford the basically minimum of 1.5 million that you need to be a part of that community. They then will send them my way because we're doing something very similarly themed, although on a much smaller scale, and you need more like 60,000 to get in. So there's a big gap there. So we're pulling mostly from the Bay Area, Oregon, Washington. So anyway, that's what we're doing, trying to create more of a grassroots kind of movement towards organizing. Was the vision, and in only 3 years, like I said, we're on our second community building from the ground up. And I've located other co-housing communities as well. So there are co-housing communities and intentional communities. So my goal is to help people either start their own or connect. So that's that. But there are also, let's see, maybe you can go to the next slide. So when people are interested in moving here, first thing I want to do is find out, what are your goals? What kind of location priorities do you have? What's your budget? People a lot of times choose this area. Like I said, it's the climate. It's the fact that Guadalajara is 3 hours and 15 minutes flight from Oakland or San Francisco. So you're not moving to the other side of the world. You're really close to go home for family events, back when we used to do things like that. But also there's high level of quality of medical and care needs. We already have senior houses people can transition into if they need to. Also a lot of people are still wanting to work online. So we're going to look at, where can we get you that meets all of those needs? And a lot about who you are and what you'd like to do and what's important to you. So then we'll help kind of look at what places are most likely to serve you over time. And do you want to buy a house, or do you want to rent a house? Do you want to be alone or in community? Those kind of things. But I specifically work with people who aren't just coming here part-time or for a short amount of time. I really want you to be successful over time here. Okay, we can go to the next one. So these are the main areas people are retiring to. It doesn't mean there aren't others, and I can answer questions roughly about a lot of different places. Mexico is really the most popular because of its proximity and because there are so many thriving expat communities here already. So you can already move into a place that has any kind of activity or wellness resources. There's already a huge amount of activity going on geared towards English speaking people. And a lot of these areas are becoming more progressive and more wellness oriented. So with acupuncture and massage and yoga and Qigong, in addition to all the classic sort of retirement activities. So people come to my area, which I love Lake Chapala region. They go to San Miguel de Allende, Puerto Vallarta, Merida, and the Huatulco region of Oaxaca. But all of those other places have a harsher climate to be in year round. So a lot of people will move to the beach, and as they age, they end up coming inland. San Miguel's the exception. It's in the mountains. It's about 1,700 feet higher than we are. We're at 5,000 feet. They're at about 67. So it gets a little colder in the winter. So people, again, this really is an ideal climate. Our climate is often listed as number 1 or number 2 in the world. People go to Costa Rica, but people are less likely to go to Costa Rica these days because the costs have gone up so much. But they go to the Lake Arenal region and a lot of smaller towns along the coast. People are going to Ecuador, to these cities: Cuenca, Quito, Vilcabamba, Olón, Panama, Portugal, Spain. Thailand is getting a lot stricter about having insurance. So they're getting stricter about wanting to make sure you have enough money to be there, because a lot of these places are ending up with low income seniors, and it's starting to really burden them as well, this seniors who don't have a lot of money. And then Malaysia. So you can ask me about other places during the question and answer, but these are really the top places people are going. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So when I first did this chart, I'm really looking at what can you live on and have a reasonably high quality lifestyle. Now, it varies a lot if you're in a more urban area or if you're in a gated community. It varies, but this is what one person can live on pretty comfortably, even in the more popular expat areas like where I am in Ajijic. So rents 250 to 750. So I in Ahik, which is like I said, it's a more expensive area. You can have a really nice 1, 2, or even 3 bedroom right now with COVID for $750 a month. Utilities 100 to 350, groceries 150 to 350. That's 350 is living pretty high on the hog. A lot of us like to go out to eat a lot because there are such great restaurants. You can have a really high quality meal for $5 to $20. I mean, those of us living in the Bay Area, what can you even get for $5 or $10? Here, you could have a really nice meal for that, and really nice environments too. You know, really atmospheric kind of places. Cell phone 30 to 80. I have a plan with Verizon that's $80 a month, unlimited calls and data throughout North America. Transportation fuel. I actually am a big proponent of trying not to come with a car because you can save a lot of money, but we're so set up for pedestrian or taxi transportation and buses. It's really nice to just try to check those habits at the door of driving a car everywhere. You're healthier, it's a lot less expensive, and it's a lot less taxing to the infrastructure. But if you do have a car, you can expect to pay $25 to $100 a month just driving around town. Domestic services 30 to 150 a month. Most of us get really kind of spoiled. Honestly, it's kind of nice not to have to do your own cleaning and gardening. Frankly, you get kind of spoiled to it. Entertainment varies a lot, $100 to $250 a month, and you've got a pretty good lifestyle. If you're a party animal, maybe $250 a month. And that's to go to concerts, cultural events, wellness activities. I mean, just about anything you want to do. So really, depending on how you want to live, 765 to 2330 US a month is doable here. And then when you start to need in-home care, that's about $4 to $8 per hour. So even if you start to need, if you broke your hip and needed care, or if you started having some issues, you could add that cost in and still stay on a pretty good budget. Now, here's the issue. A lot of people have moved here on a low income, and they get down here and they aren't really able to manage their life, paying their bills and quality care. So they become really vulnerable here. So people like me who have a care management background are really in demand. And there aren't, I'm trying to train people to do it, but having someone who can oversee, not just helping you with your care activities, but actually help oversee your medical appointments, your finances, all those kind of things that require a pretty good understanding of care management. That's something we really need to build more opportunity for people here to step in those roles. But you can see how affordable it is even when you need help. So you can scroll on down. I'll just tell you a little bit about buying houses. Really, you can get, depending on if you're in a rural area or more popular area, you can still get a house in some areas for about $100,000. That's going to be a pretty nice place. In my area, which is very, very popular, it might be closer to 200,000 for a 2 or 3 bedroom nice house. And you can have, I mean, if you wanted to spend $400,000, that's basically, I mean, while not a mansion, it's halfway to mansion. That's a really nice 4 bedroom, 4 bath house with views. So retiring in community, and this is where my heart really lies, is to help people, especially if they're single, who have done pretty well with their careers, but they don't have, the $1 million that you really need to cover you throughout the last 20 years of life if you are somewhat frail or otherwise, but especially if you're going to need some care. That we help them come together and live in communities where they have independence, they have privacy, but again, they have a sense of community and people looking after each other, as well as hired staff. So what I really like to do is help people come either find a community or start their own. And there are more and more, especially in our area. There was an article, there was an interview with me a few years ago where I talked about this area being a wellspring for intentional communities, and that vision has really come true. It's just skyrocketing, people coming together and living with 2 or 3 or 10 other people. So also for some of your clients who may be ready to live in independent living communities, don't have care, but they provide the meals and the housekeeping and laundry. And those, that's, it's rare that you'd find a $700 one, although you can. That's more like $1,600 per month for the rent, the utilities, the food, housekeeping, and just general people around if you need something. Not the care though, but even the facilities where it's the room, the board, and caregivers taking care of your care needs, that's 1,600 to 2,000 a month. So those of you who have parents who've needed care, you're looking at in the Bay Area, it's more like 5,000 to 12,000 a month, depending on what you really need for that same thing. And it's very high quality. A lot of them are brand new. And then tiny houses. Like I said, we built a 26 house, tiny house community where everyone's got their tiny little space, but you have shared grounds and shared meals. Bodie Village, the one I'm building right now, we're not going to do shared meals in the beginning. We're going to instead have restaurants cater when we want to eat together. And that is mostly because it's very hard to please everybody with all the diets people are on now. Vegan, vegetarian, organic, but we will still have people who can help organize around that. And then again, just really, I get contacted with people who just have ideas about living in community, and they'll say, I've already got a group of friends who wants to do this, and I can help them find connections to land and just how to set up the structure, the legal, the financial structure, how to put it all together. I love doing that. I love doing that. Okay, next slide. These are just some pictures of some houses. The one on the bottom left is the exterior of that house on the inside. But these were 2 sisters who came together, and they rented a $1,500 a month house. That's 4 bedrooms, including a little art studio, pool. This house, $1,500 a month. And so that's really easy to share with 2 or 3 people and divide those costs. To buy that house would be about $400,000. Really nice places you can see, but just to give you a feel for some of the pricing. Okay, you can go to the next one. The top left, that's an independent living community. So you can see how nice that is, and people get the 2 meals a day, 6 days a week, the rent, utilities, and just general, someone around if you needed something during the day. And something like that is about 1,500. On the right is, that's in Oaxaca. That's in the state of Huatulco, but that's a completely accessible, handicap accessible, independent living community. Bottom left is a memory care facility, full on, high level needs support for memory care, the room, the board, the food and care for $1,600 a month. On the right, it's just a house. This house was actually $950,000, but it was 10 bedrooms, 12 baths, big, huge kitchen area. Each room had a balcony like this overlooking the ocean. So these are the kind of places that if you had a group of friends or family who wanted the privacy plus community, people coming in to cook most of the meals, provide everything. That's less than $1 million right on the ocean. So just ideas. Okay, next slide. So these are just some ways that you could get involved with me. You could take, when we're doing this again, I do these exploratory trips, and I'll put together a trip anywhere where I can get 4 or 5 people to go. I like them to be small because we're having fun, but we're really doing research. They're pretty heavy information trips. There's another group focused on Mexico that does workshops here. They're on hold right now, but next year they'll start again, that are 6 days long and cover visa requirements, medical care, uh, shopping, looking at real estate to look at different markers for how much that is. And just having people that you get to know so that if you did move here, you already would have some built-in contacts. Support for joining or creating co-housing communities, door-to-door support for a move overseas. So that's if, especially if someone's on their own or you have clients that are on their own, to really help coach them through the whole process, and hopefully to work with, if one of the ways that we can work together is if you have people that you could steer in the direction of being able to sell their house and use that money to just live as well and comfortably as they need to for the rest of their life, that between the two of us and our contacts, we would really be able to help them prepare their house, downsize, sell their home, get visas, make, all the practical details of making a move here, and what kind of environment to move into. And the other thing is I'd love to do workshops, whether now mostly online, or when we start doing this again in person, to really talk to groups of friends about all of these options. The other thing I want to say is you can go on Retire Internationally, my Facebook page, and like that page. But you'll be able to see a lot of personal stories of people who've moved to Mexico, particularly ones who've moved into my communities, and pictures of what life is like here, because people are having a ball and they're sharing their pictures, and I share it to my Facebook page. So you can really see what kind of things we're doing down here. We're even now we're having a ball because we can be outside, we can be socially distanced and still be having a lot of fun. And also that's focus on Mexico's Facebook page if you want to have a look at them. But right now I'm actually doing a lot of customized things, because some people in the beginning of this whole COVID thing, people weren't willing to travel. And now people are saying, look, I need to find an affordable solution, and I need it sooner rather than later. And so I'm supporting them to have as safe a transition as they can, to come down and spend some time here and try it on. So that usually looks like I find them a place to stay, I sterilize it, I pick them up in a sterilized car with masks on, and kind of set them up so that they don't have to quarantine. Mexico's not requiring it, but that they would generally have a stocked refrigerator and be able to go out in a limited kind of way, respecting protocols here, where you're giving people distance, wearing masks, but you can still do so many things and meet those parameters here, because we're just geared towards it with our climate. So I don't know, just go to the next. I think there was one picture, but it looks like it's not. Do you have that picture that I sent? Yeah. Okay, this is our tiny house community. Namaste, Lake Chapala. So you can see the kind of folks there. Bonnie's 60A, the woman on the right is early 70s. That's kind of most people who find this model attractive. The age and place model they've hit 70, so they know they're not living alone for the rest of their lives, may not be the best option, but they still they're still active and independent. So they have their own place. Like these are 400 square foot. That's a duplex version there. They're 400 square feet with their 400 square foot private covered rooftop patio. And then common gardens, common seating areas, and lots of socialization. Even now we're doing these Mirador concerts where the band will play on one Mirador, and you look around and you see twosies and threesies dancing on the other Miradors. So we're able to have concerts and be outside and be dancing, and all different kinds of music, Mexican music, American music, even during times of COVID. So for right now, I think the thing I would like to do is take questions from you, but also have any stories about something I've said, what you might be relating to, things that might have happened with your parents or your clients, and all your questions.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi.
Hi, this is Richard. I'm out here, Morgan Hill area, California.
Hi, Richard.
How you doing? I have a lot of questions actually, but I don't want to.
Good.
Let me see here. It may be a dumb question, but maybe someone else's question. But cartels, cartels, out there, we have to be worried about.
No, well, in the expat areas in particular, no. If anything, cartels protect the expats because they have a lot of legitimate business interests. So they have a very vested interest in protecting expats and expat activities. But it does happen every once in a while where there'll be turf wars, and there will be activity among the gangs, but it just doesn't really affect our world directly. But most of us who live here, at least in our area and in a lot of areas in Mexico, the longer you're here, the more you realize how much safer you actually are here than in comparably sized places in the US. We have petty crime like you do anywhere where you have richer people and poorer people. I lived in Montclair in Oakland, nice area, but we had home invasions on a more like burglaries on a regular basis. Only there you have holdups at the CVS for people's medication. So I mean, when you do a comparison, the makeup of the crime looks different. But in terms of how safe you are on the streets, most of us find that these areas of Mexico, we're actually safer. I walk around at night by myself all the time. I've never felt unsafe here. Some people don't do that, but I do. And but I think that there's just a lot of exaggeration of what really goes on here when you have to really break it down and look at specific areas and the nature of the crimes. Is it gang on gang, just like the gang on gang activity in the US? So you kind of have to dig a little deeper, but I can just tell you, having lived in Mexico almost 3 years, I feel completely safe here.
That's great, and sounds about right. A lot of exaggeration. I get it.
There is. I mean, it's really almost funny when you've been here a while to be outside the US hearing about crime, because obviously when you're outside of the US, you're hearing about all the the horrendous things that happen in the US, like school shootings and concert shootings, and so it's interesting that being on the outside looking in.
Also, are we able to? Sorry, one moment. Are we able to carry firearms there as a citizen?
Not legally, no.
Okay.
People, no. Don't come with a gun. I do know people who have guns, though. I know expats who have guns.
Okay. But if you were living there, could you apply for the carry
No.
to protect your own self, your family? No.
Can I ask you, Richard, do you have connections to Mexico, family connections?
I do, but not a lot, and that's why I'm asking these certain questions.
No, I just asked because you might qualify for citizenship, but most expats come and get residency visas. So you're not a citizen, you don't have to renounce citizenship, but you get resident visas so that you don't have to make multiple entries, because you can come for 180 days just on a tourist visa. And a lot of people don't qualify for permanente visas. They'll just go back. They're going back to visit family anyway. So they'll just, they're going home every 180 days anyway.
That's perfect.
Apply for resident visas where you don't have to do that.
Yeah, and that was actually my other question too, the visa, because I was born and raised here in California, and I guess I would need my visa. Well, I would talk to you more on that.
No, it's a good question, and it's an important question. So generally, the best thing that you want to do is be able to apply for a permanente visa, because once you go through the process, it's thorough, but it's not difficult. It's only as difficult as you make it, because if you show up with all the documents you're required to have, it's super easy. But generally, the requirements keep going up and up because the cost of living is going up here, because so many expats are pouring in here. You can't even imagine how many expats are pouring into Mexico. More expats coming to Mexico than Mexicans going to the US. That's been true for a couple of years now, because people need affordable options, and it's a great place to live. And so
I
um,
agree.
keep going up and up. But right now, to get a Permanente visa, you need an income, a verifiable income from a regular source to get a retirement visa of about $3,200 a month. Or you need assets of 132,000 that have been in the bank for the last year. But if you don't have that and you have more like 1,900 a month, or you have, I think it's at about 50,000 now in the bank for the last year, then you can qualify for a temporal and convert that to a Permanente. This is just in a nutshell. Retirement visas, if you have a pretty decent Social Security between yourself or between you and your spouse, you can pretty easily get a residency visa in a number of different countries. Mexico's actually higher than a lot of the other countries I mentioned, but you're going to be okay if you have income of 1,900. But it's nice if you can go directly for a Permanente. It's easier. So.
Thank you.
I've got
Karen, yeah, go ahead.
I've got a couple questions in the chat, which Malia, you may have, we're going for. I'll start with, can you live in one part of the community? Can you live there for just part of the year? Or do you need to be a full-time resident?
To live in one of my communities or the other co-housings?
Yes.
It depends yes is the short answer. So at Namaste, okay, so there's a co-housing community here called Rancho La Salud that's fee simple, where you buy your house. They have an architectural design, and you pick which, whether you want a duplex or you want an individual home, and you pick it, and it's fee simple. So it's the house and the land underneath it, and then 1/36 of the total. They started the duplexes are about 260,000, and in Mexico that needs to be cash. But if people are selling a house, that's pretty easy. So you own it, so you can do whatever you want in that community. Now, if you're going to there's no restriction about having renters when you're gone, and especially if you want to be gone in the peak season, which is from about December to April. There's definitely a demand. I have a feeling that they'll get a few more regulations as they see people getting renters who might not be appropriate. But right now it's kind of assume that people will, if they're going to have a renter, they try to have them be appropriate for the community. Our community, so Namaste, Lake Chapala, you can absolutely have someone rent your place and stay there. We even help you find people. But again, we would be trying to fish in a pool of people who relate to what they're doing there. It's not for everyone, because that one's non-dual spirituality, and people meditate and talk about spiritual things and do yoga and different meditation groups. And so most people wouldn't really be comfortable there if they didn't relate to that kind of message. At Bodhi Village, the one we're building, it'll be similar. You can definitely rent out to someone. But again, we'd prefer that they not be, they wouldn't be the party set, for example, that they're relatively like-minded with the other members there.
No spring breakers is what you're saying.
No spring breakers.
Lots of really good questions coming in, so I'm just going to keep going down. What is the cost for a tiny home to purchase, or can you rent them? And of course, approximate, because it probably depends on what you do.
Okay, so our tiny house model, so this model here, Namaste, with the tiny houses, there are duplexes and there are individuals. They do not own these, although they're both, these women are spending lots of money personalizing this house, but that is their house to live in, rent controlled as long as they want to, in exchange for the fact that they put 6 years rent up front to help finance and build the community. So the duplex there, it's based on rent of $695 rent controlled for the rest of your life, but they had to pay 6 years rent up front. So it was the duplex 55,000. And you'll see the math doesn't add up. It's because there was 5,000 part of that. That's a community fee that's non-refundable. And then the individual ones were 75,000 up front and rent controlled at $972 a month for the rest of the time they want to be there. And we can only do that because we financed it in this grassroots way. Bodie Village, it's 5 years rent up front, so it's $60,000, and then rent controlled 1,000 a month. But it's more because we actually built in the services. Rather, they pay a monthly fee, as I said, to cover meals and driver and management and activities. At Bodie, it's all included, so that 1,000 a month, which again is rent controlled for the rest of the time anyone wants to be there, but it includes rent, utilities, wellness activities, a concierge all day long, anyone to call you a driver or get you to a doctor or help you connect anything you need, and then 24-hour on-call emergency support. So that's all included for 1,000 a month.
Okay. What about language? Is it really important to speak Spanish? We heard you speaking Spanish earlier, so is that?
I was just trying to impress.
I'm impressed.
No, it's not impressive. Well, this is a guy who was coming to fix my toilet, so he's not going to most likely not speak. I thought it was a gardener's assistant, but he's most likely I'm going to need to speak Spanish to be able to talk to him. But all the restaurants, all the medical professionals, all the activities geared towards expat, that's all in English. In fact, most people come here with a desire to learn Spanish and they kind of give up because it's so easy not to speak Spanish. And a lot of people just falls away. I'd say 95% of the expats here don't speak any Spanish at all, other than please and thank you. And I'd like a glass of water, maybe. It's actually kind of disappointing to want to get better at Spanish and not force yourself to do it because it's too easy not to.
What about the hospitalization there and things like that? I'm going to throw in kind of a question in with this is, do you find that the medical is comparable to what's here, and how does insurance go? So if people are retiring, and this bleeds into another question, but if people are retiring and have Social Security and Medicare and those things in the United States, but then move to Mexico, do you keep those benefits, or do those go away?
Yeah, this is a multi-level question. I'm going to try to do the best I can to nutshell.
Yep.
So it really depends on each person what plan they're going to put in place. The answer to your question, the private medical care here is not the same as US. It's far superior overall. It's far superior. And there are a number of reasons for that. Because you're paying generally for those hospitals, you're usually paying out of pocket. You don't have to pay the insurance schedule. So if you have an issue, they're going to do every diagnostic test available.
You got kind of quiet for a second.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm going to try not to just download a bunch, but I can just tell you your hospital experience here and your surgery experience, your experience with doctors and medical care here is really going to be overall superior. It's rated, usually Mexico the private system's rated in the top 6 in the world, depending on what you're looking at. I now have been at the hospital many times with clients, with friends. It is phenomenally good care for a fraction of the cost. Now, having said that, if you have Medicare I don't know if you know how Medicare works, but Medicare Part A is hospitalization. And you don't have to pay for again when you qualify for Medicare. Part B pays 80%, and that comes out of your check, about $120 a month. And then you have your supplemental. So if you have a good supplemental, you're generally, if you move to Mexico, going to want to keep that and then have an emergency evacuation plan to take you back to whatever hospital you want if you had a major medical condition. But more and more, when people come here and see the difference in what your experience is, a lot of times if it's 5,000 or less, sometimes even 10,000 or less, they would prefer to stay here in Mexico and do their care and pay privately. But you definitely want to have, I like people to keep that supplemental and have the evac insurance, which is only about $700 a year. And it's really high quality, really high service. Just if you did have those really major traumas that might end up more like $20,000 or $30,000 out of pocket. I actually have private health insurance here because I'm skewed a bit younger. So I pay $1,600 a year for it's basically catastrophic, but it's a really good catastrophic policy. I still pay privately to go to the doctor. But it really is a little different for everyone. And then you have people coming here. So for example, if you're coming here and you have Parkinson's, I love talking to people with Parkinson's because they, even though they're young and still active, they've got the diagnosis. So they realize they need to be in a place where the activities of daily living are affordable. But basically you're not in and out of the hospital a lot with Parkinson's. You're usually taking medications, which you can get here, but it's not like having a major heart condition where you might need multiple trips to the hospital. So even your health conditions, your approach to healthcare, if you're more of a person who wants to follow alternative healthcare plans, you're better off here because all of those things exist here, high quality and very low cost out of pocket. So for example, acupuncture is $17, going to the chiropractor's $25. So naturopaths are $20. So it really depends a lot on your makeup in that way. There's a new hospital here, brand new, that is now working with some supplemental policies so that you can actually do your care here and your insurance up there will pay. So there are more and more opportunities to use your supplemental in Mexico, but you can't use your Part A hospitalization in Mexico or your Part B, that 80%. It's your supplemental.
And can you keep the Social Security?
Yes, and
Right.
you just what you do is you keep a U.S. address, and people have their Social Security just deposited directly into their bank account, and then you access your money from here through an ATM or through wire transfers. So
Okay,
you want to keep your U.S. address.
okay. What about taxes on homes? And then there's a couple other ones, but how about taxes? What does that look like?
You guys, you just won't even believe, it would just blow your mind. It's maybe $1,000 a year for property taxes. No matter what kind of house you have, it's not more than that. And it's almost nothing relative to the US. It's almost nothing.
So I need to move to Mexico is what you're telling me. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, it is pretty damn nice. It's pretty nice.
There's a question about the water. So I'm gonna break this into two questions because now I have that. So is the water safe to drink? I see you're drinking. But is the water safe to drink there? And you say you live near a lake. Can you swim in that lake or is it just for looking?
Yeah, you can. The locals swim in it. Most of the expats don't because it's really shallow, so it's kind of mucky. And then people will tell you it's really polluted, but the actual results, the tests of the water, it's not any more polluted than another large lake might be anywhere. I mean, in terms of a lake that's near an urban area. But most people don't because it's just shallow and mucky. So most people swim in pools. And then we
Okay.
take beach because it's, for me, I'd rather live where the climate is good and then visit the beach. I just go over for 3 or 4 days. It's about 5-hour drive to the nearest beach.
Okay.
And I take buses a lot. I love the buses here. They're real high-end luxury buses and fun for me.
And the water is safe to drink?
So the water drinking. So almost any newish house is going to have at least a double and usually triple filtration system. So like at Bodie Village, we have sand carbon filter, and then we have reverse, and then we have ultraviolet. And then most people also put an osmosis filter just because it makes them feel better. So it's actually, so you can drink the tap water. If you were in a really old home, that water, a lot of times you're not going to drink. That pipes are so old that there's seepage. So from the sewer system. So if it's a really old home that hasn't been remodeled, people they don't drink the tap water and they just buy big bottled water. There are water trucks that go by and come in and just deliver big containers of water.
Okay.
But most that's here we have water purification systems.
And do homes have air conditioning? Or is that something you could add?
You can, but we really don't need it. We really don't need it. May is our hottest month, and you're generally good with just being inside the hot part of the day with a fan on you. Now, having said that, a lot of people are moving here who aren't used to hot weather, and they melt in May. They just melt in May. So more and more people are getting air conditioners. But you really don't have to run them very much. At Bodie Village, we're setting them up to have the capacity to put an air conditioning in, but mostly we design it to be cool and have ceiling fans. So hopefully people won't feel like they need to, because we're solar, and I'd rather not have to add 10 more solar panels for people to get air conditioning, but we do have the capacity to add it.
And we kind of joked a little bit, no spring breakers and things like that. But I wonder, it's geared towards retiring internationally, but do you ever find me who can work from home now because COVID has put that into place for a lot of people? Do you see people who now can work from home indefinitely that are like, I'm getting out of the hustle bustle, and if I can do it from a community with like-minded people, do you think you'll see an influx of people that are younger?
Yeah, we definitely are. We definitely are getting more youngies. And I'm 55 and I feel like a baby, I have to say. There are more, like, Facebook groups to help people connect. And I do have a lot of friends that are in their 40s and 50s now, and even in their 30s. But I hang out with a 36-year-old one day and an 80-year-old the next day, and they both feel like peers to me because I'm hanging out with like-minded people. But yes, absolutely, there are more young people coming.
And you're on the internet, so I think sometimes people have in their minds of going to Mexico, and like Richard pointed out, unsafe, cartels, third world, doesn't have a lot of the amenities that we're thinking of. And the more I hear, it's just a community and a town. So do you find maybe the internet isn't as good, or is it good if not better? Or is it like here, where some days it's great and other days it's not?
Yeah, it's reliable almost completely for streaming, for Zoom. Doesn't mean 100%, but it's 90%. The people who have a hard time working here are people who need to upload huge files, like programmers. That's harder, but there are lots of people doing face-to-face consulting, therapy, working online here. In fact, our Bodie resident, I just started taking applications, and we have a gal coming from Berkeley who's put her deposit down. She was on my first trip here, so she had already been here a few times, whereas other people considering Bodie, they haven't been able to visit yet, and they're not quite ready. But anyway, she's a therapist, and the reason she didn't move down here a couple of years ago is she wondered if she could be effective on a Zoom session. Well, with COVID, people got to see it and see that actually they can be quite effective. They don't really need to go into an office. And so that has opened up the possibility for a lot of people because they've seen they can be effective online. So she's coming down probably March.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are all the questions in the chat. Does anybody else have questions? Final thoughts? Richard.
Hi, Carrie. As far as the financing, how does the financing go? For myself, this is great. Love it. Thank you. And, for myself, I'm not ready to retire. I was thinking more of my parents and anybody else that was interested. How does the financing go when you're trying to buy one of your places?
Well, again, ours aren't for sale. They're rent, but you pay rent up front.
Oh, I see. Okay. I
But
misunderstood that. Sorry.
Say the Rancho La Salud that I mentioned, where it is a fee simple, there you really can't get a mortgage here. You have to have cash. So if it's your parents and they're wanting to buy a house, it's going to cost $150,000 to be in expat areas. Now, if they speak Spanish and they're willing to go to an area that's more geared towards Mexican people, like even Chapala, which is a lovely town not far from here, you might be able to get a pretty nice place for $100,000, pretty decent place. But ours are the rental upfront rent model. Trying to think, yeah, and most of the independent living and the assisted livings, they're monthly rent. Monthly
Oh,
fee.
okay, I see. Sorry. Okay, gotcha. I misunderstood. I thought you could buy these homes.
No.
Mhm.
No,
But-
don't. It's kind of an unusual model. I just made it up. It's an amalgam of a lot of different things that I drew from. I kind of took the best of several different models. With Bodie, there are investment opportunities here too, just to let you guys know. I became an investor in the community that I'm building now. It's kind of my retirement, so I put up the money. And then I do have an income stream after that upfront rent is paid back. So in year 6, I start having a pretty nice income stream. It's not designed for investors who are trying to get, a 16% ROI necessarily, but people who are more altruistic investors where they want a good rate of return, but they also want to do something that serves the community. So I am letting people can be investors in the association that owns Bodie Village or the other communities that will do, so that they can be investors in this model. So it's a pretty good investment model if anyone's interested in that too. But at Bodie, if you invest now and then in 10 years you want to move in, you get the original investor rate when you decide to move in of $1,000 a month to include the rent and utilities and the concierge services and activities, even if you don't physically move in for several years.
Okay, perfect. You answered my question. Part of it. Thank you. Awesome. And then another question. Sorry. As far as using you as an agent, are you a realtor out there? I'm assuming.
I have realtors I like here, but I kind of
Okay.
I have different go-tos because, as you all know, you're looking for the right personality match, and you're looking at realtors who serve a specific market. So I'm like a dating service really, where I just try to get to know people and where they want to be and what's important to them and what they're looking for, and connect them with the most appropriate agent. And if it's someone coming to look at intentional communities, that's sort of, or assisted living, that's sort of my area of focus. I'm driven to serve seniors, real seniors.
Perfect. Thank you, Carrie.
I've got one last question that kind of came up from me, and Carrie, if we can, I will send this to everybody, the presentation. So Kimberly, I'll send you Carrie's contact information. But I'm wondering, because other people may watch this, and a lot of people are also real estate agents. Do you do anything with referrals? Like if you've got somebody who's selling their house in Silicon Valley and they're looking to get out of here, and they've seen your presentation and they say, hey, we know of this great community, and they come down there. Do you guys work with agents, or do you work with agents in the Bay Area to help their clients find your type of community?
Yeah, I would like to do more of it. I've given a lot of presentations to realtors, and I think it's sort of, it's kind of a longer cycle, but it's so mutually beneficial because you're helping send people to my communities, and I'm helping your people have a place to go so they'll list their homes. And I really want to see more teamwork in that way. I did have a gal who moved into co-housing here, and I connected her with a real estate agent in Berkeley who sold her home for her. Mm-hmm. And I made with her because she's so good with older people. And it can be so overwhelming. You guys know this. When people have to downsize a home they've lived in a long time, and they operate just a little, still smart people, but they just operate a little slower, and they start to go through it, and then they just shut down and stick in their home because it's just too overwhelming. So I really like working with people who are really understanding around that. So it's usually mutually beneficial. I need to if I re-upped my California license, I could get a referral fee, but honestly, I just haven't felt like doing it. So probably we'd just work it out individually, where it's beneficial for all.
You mentioned SCORE just did the SRES, the Senior Residential Specialist designation, and we're actually doing it again in February. But it's interesting that you mentioned that, because you're right. A lot of people that are older that need to move, they look at what they have and it's overwhelming. And one of the speakers that we had at SRES helped people organize their homes. And maybe we could also offer, to have you come in and just do a brief, hey, this is who I am, 5 minutes to those people taking the class. And I don't have the class launched yet, but For those of you that are attending this class, and I know this is recorded, so this doesn't count, but if any of you are taking this right now and want to sign up and get your SRES designation, which is specifically towards working with seniors, I can do a 25% discount off the class. So it'll be probably around the $175 range, maybe 150, depending on what I price it at. So if you're interested in that for after this, let me know. Again, I don't have it launched, but Carrie, when I do it, I'd love to put you in touch with Bobby Decker, who teaches the class, so that you can come on and speak to those agents as well.
I'd love to. And do you, so Althea is a part of your group, right? Do most people know who she is?
She is, and she actually has come in and spoke with Bobby Decker a few times because she helps, for the ones that are staying here, review the contracts for some of the homes that have information. And I saw a couple of you, if you've already taken the designation, you can take it again as a refresher for 25 bucks. So yeah.
Here's the woman, I just want to give her, here's a woman who's real estate agent, a lawyer, and a gerontologist.
Yes, she is amazing.
Wow. Yeah, because you really are providing solutions for people. It's the difference between a really high level of quality of life when you're older and not much fun, frankly, for a lot of people.
Yep. I think it's really important when you're working with seniors, and I'm currently going through it. So just, I know this is not internationally retiring, but the more you know about working with senior citizens and their kids and their grandkids, the better you're off, because we all think we should have a say in all of this, and learning how to deal with those complex situations. And we lost you, Carrie. I see you. I think you're speaking. We don't hear you.
But I just want to say, if any of you want to contact me and ask questions or give me a call, that's great. But if you want to come visit, that would be wonderful too. I'd love to see you whenever you feel safe to travel.
Yeah.